Our company was either going to have to get more financial resources in or quit. We had to make some pivotal decisions. What are we going to do to get out of this predicament that we were in?
If there was one big takeaway that you could give to our listeners and entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast, what would that big takeaway be?
Well, for me, it is.
Welcome to today's episode of Sask Entrepreneurs Podcast. I have a really exciting guest today, Sandra Purdy. And Sandra Purdy is the Chief Operating Officer of Prairie Berries, Inc. She has been in Saskatoon berry business since 1993, when her and her husband made the decision to diversify their grain farm. Previous to starting the berry orchard, she worked as continuous improvement manager and sales manager for SaskTel for almost 25 years. Sandra is also the president of the Saskatoon Berry Council of Canada, providing the leadership to help shape the future of the Saskatoon berry industry. Her leadership to the industry has focused on the roadmap to develop a strong brand image and international awareness of Saskatoon berries. The goal she established back in 1996 for her own company was simple and has not changed over the years: to develop Saskatoon berries into functional foods and nutraceutical bioactives that contribute to health and vitality. Over the years, Sandra has faced many ups and downs in her journey, and today we're here to learn more about her journey. So Sandra, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Monique. Appreciate being here.
Excellent. So Sandra, we've been known each other for a few months now, and I was really inspired to learn about your journey in growing prairie berries. So why don't we start off with your backstory and how you ended up here?
Okay, well, remember, I've been in business for over 30 years now, so it's way back there that you're trying to make me remember. So I think the biggest significant change in terms of what took us to the Saskatoon berry industry was the fact that in the late 80s, there was a downturn in the agriculture industry. Commodities took a dive. And my husband, who is a third generation farmer, was in that industry. So it hit our family farm very hard, not only us as a family, but his parents and his grandparents as well. So we had to make some pivotal decisions in terms of what are we going to do to get out of this predicament that we were in. So what we decided to do was to look at other alternatives. And in the farming industry, what we loved about farming, first of all, was the fact that it's the culture of the industry. It's a great place to grow up and to live, and to have the ability to govern your own work schedule, to have the ability to lose or win at your own pace, if you will, being a farmer. And so with the impact that the downturn in the agriculture industry was having, we decided that we had to change the way we were doing things, maybe change our careers and our occupation. But we primarily looked at how could we stay on the farm and come up with a plan that would allow us to exist with the passion that my husband had on the farm. And for myself, I was a pretty flexible individual in terms of I like multitasking, I like challenges, I wasn't afraid of failure, those sorts of things. So I thought if there was some way that we could start a business that would allow us to stay on the farm, but still give me the ability to challenge my mind and be a part of that farming operation, that we could still exist on the farm. So with that, what we did is that we started looking at where we might go. And that decision that we made was to stay on the farm, but to do more with less. So my husband decided to give up the traditional grain farming that we were doing. I decided to give up my career at SaskTel and become a business manager or an entrepreneur to create this new business. Nice. So with that, we thought about what's the greatest trend that's happening in the industry, and we knew that food would always be something everybody needed. So that was the starting point. What food could we grow outside of grains and pulses and that sort of thing? And also along with that, both my husband and myself, we like nature, we like to be healthy, we think about our grandchildren and the sustainability of our earth as a result of what we do every single day in our lives. So we decided it would be a food product with sustainable growth and that we could grow it on a smaller land base of the farm, and also have less impact to how we impact the earth, if you will.
Nice.
So with that, we decided to create a Saskatoon berry orchard.
Nice.
And so that Saskatoon berry orchard, why Saskatoons? People always ask me, why would you develop Saskatoon berries? Well, Saskatoon berries were used by the traditional First Nations people as a basic staple for food and preservation of food, but more importantly, as medicine. So without doctors back then, they used their food as medicine. And so they used it in many different ways. For example, for eye health, they used it for stomach pains, they used it for snow blindness, they used it for curing bleeding after childbirth, just many different ways. So knowing that and the history behind it, that was one of the things that we thought, well, there's a healthy product used historically in many different ways. So maybe we could look at that as an option. So we also found out that the Saskatoon berries grow native to the Prairie provinces. So with the native growth of Saskatoon berries, to us it meant less tender loving care, less environment input in terms of chemicals and those sorts of things, fertilizers and that, because they grow native, and in the native population they don't use any of those things. So it became very attractive to us in doing that. And so that became our decision, is to put in a Saskatoon berry orchard. So we did more research that said that one tree would emit enough oxygen for 18 people for a lifetime.
That's amazing.
It's absolutely amazing. So you think about our orchard now, we have 130,000 trees.
Wow.
Right? So contribution to sustainable agriculture was really a strong focus. The fact that the early scientific research done by people like Dr. G. Maza, Dr. Richard Green, and Dr. A.M. Zalintli on the benefits and the potential of Saskatoons when it comes to chronic diseases, such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, inflammatory diseases. Those are research that had already been done on Saskatoon berries to show the natural properties of the berries in terms of using them for health and for prevention of diseases. So, that was absolutely the most interesting thing that we thought about as we started developing this orchard. Trees grow for a lifetime if you keep them properly managed. So, for example, our Saskatoon berry trees are managed so that they grow for 12 years, and then they are cut down and they're burned off and regrown. And so they're constantly growing without having to replant or anything like that. So the attractiveness of all of those things together got us into this journey of Saskatoon berries.
That's amazing. Looking at how you've done the research and how you've actually built this orchard. So what is because Saskatoon berries are unique to Saskatchewan?
They're unique to the Prairie provinces, but
Right.
they also grow in the U.S. along the northern border of the U.S. They grow in parts of eastern Canada, and they grow up along the Yukon territories.
And are they still called Saskatoon berries over there?
That's a great question. So Saskatoon berries have lots of different names depending on where they're grown. So you have Canada has named them Saskatoon berries, and the reason for that, before I go on to the other names, is because the Cree called them Misquatumia. So if you Misquatumia, you see Saskatoon, they got the tune in there, and the Saskatoon, and the city of Saskatoon was named after the Saskatoon berry, by the way. So the other names are Juneberry, serviceberries, bushberry, pear tree. I don't even know if I can remember them all. That's the ones I can remember off the top of my head.
Right.
Yeah.
And what is the closest berry that comes to the Saskatoon berry that is out there? Is it blueberries? Are they
Okay, that is another great question, Monib. So Saskatoon berries, everybody says they look like a blueberry.
They do.
And they kind of do, right? Yeah. They're dark blue.
That's
right? Shape-wise, they're a little different, but they look like a blueberry. But they're not even related to the blueberry plant family. Wow. They are related to the apple family, believe it or not. Apple family. So if you ever get a chance to find a Saskatoon berry tree here in Saskatoon, is take a green fruit with a little bit of red on it and eat it. You'd swear you were eating an apple.
Wow.
Yeah. But as they ripen, they become sweeter. They have a thick skin, which holds most of the properties that you have for antioxidants and anthocyanins and magnesium. Vitamin E comes from the seeds that are inside of the Saskatoon berries that are edible.
Interesting. Excellent. Yeah. So when it came to obviously building your business, obviously, the first few years of the business are always very, very challenging, right? So I can just imagine your journey in the first 5 years. Like, how did you overcome those challenges? What were some of the key challenges that you faced during the building of your business?
Yeah. Let me talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So 1993, we planted 3 acres as our entrance into the Saskatoon berries. And 3 acres isn't very much. Like it's 3,000 trees, if you will. And so that was to test, can they grow on the land? Because the land that we picked was marginal farmland. It was our worst piece of land because we were going to rent out the other bits of our land. We had 5 sections, and we were only keeping a quarter section for the Saskatoon berries. So we thought, well, we better try it out. So we planted 3,000 trees, 3 acres of trees. And after the first test planting, after 1 year, we said, oh my God, this is so much work. This better be a business, or we get out of it, because it was so much work. Manual work, that is. And in 1996, we planted 7 more acres of trees, and that became our big plunge. That was really the turning point for us in terms of, okay, we're committed. We're doing this whether it's a lose or win battle. It's just going to happen. And then in 1998, I left my full-time job at SaskTel, and I began processing Saskatoon berries. So that first challenge was, you're making a food product. So you have to live within the confines and the rules and regulations of producing a food product. So understanding labeling laws, understanding the food laws, understanding the plants, the facilities that you had to produce them in, became a huge piece of the business that I didn't even think about when we were doing that. So that was in 1998. Then we had some products that we had developed, and now we have to market those berries, right? I came from a sales background for the telephone company, so I thought, well, it would be relatively easy, but no, marketing is not easy. Thank you for people like yourself that can help people like my small company to do a much better job of it. So marketing was a huge challenge for us. And even today, I would have to say it's one of the largest challenges that I face, is terms of marketing an unknown fruit to the rest of the world. Like, how do you describe it? How do you make sure that people can use that fruit in a way that makes sense to them? Because we have many different cultures, but still it's a healthy fruit. So how might they use it versus how I use it as a Canadian, right? Mm-hmm. So that was another challenge. Then in 2002, we started building our processing plant. Well, now you got a whole new set of regulations that you have to go by. So building a plant requires electrical, sewers, water, all of those sorts of things, building structure. And they all have to fit within the guidelines of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency's protocol for the development of a food processing plant. So that particular document, for your information, is over 202 pages long. Mm-hmm. So trying to read it and understand it and what works with it, trying to find the right people to help us to develop that facility so we could produce food in it.
And did you get a lot of support from the government to be able to get insights on how to follow those guidelines, or did you have assistance in that process, or was it pretty much learning yourself and trying to adapt accordingly?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the government assistance because they have been good, very
Excellent.
Good in different particular areas. On that particular one, it was more of learn and read and then ask the professionals like the electricians, have you worked in a food processing plant? What did you learn there? Can you implement it into our facility? Or same with the builders, we have many builders that build food processing plants. So to take their expertise and use it to help you be successful. And that's probably a good learning for any entrepreneur. Don't be afraid to ask for expertise in areas that you're not familiar with. So it's not like I had to learn everything on my own, but it's to make sure that I understood what the regulations were so I could make sure that they were being implemented and there was no shortcuts or bypasses that would prevent us from producing in that facility later on.
Makes sense.
And I think at that point in time as well, when we were looking at that food processing plant, is that I didn't think near big enough. I have had 4 expansions to my plant since 2002. So don't just think about tomorrow and the next day and 5 years out. Try and think bigger. Like really, what is it that you need and what kind of volume are you going to put through that plant? Because I think it'd be easier to build it today than it would be the way I did it, add on and try and retrofit spaces to do the processing that we are doing today.
And that's really important where you have this big vision, right? I mean, otherwise you can't really have set goals in place to be able to meet that vision. And sometimes we do think too small because we underestimate what we can actually do in 10, 20 years. We're looking only in the next couple of years as far as what we can achieve. So that becomes a bit of a restricting point for sure. So that's interesting. I mean, I know a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this podcast. They're looking for some insights as far as, what can they do to actually impact their business in a great way. And one of those key things is to have a big vision and then basically have a plan for growth accordingly. So, but we'd love to take your insights on that as far as what is your big vision and what is your path to achieving it?
Oh, you ask such big questions, Monique. So I guess if I was to look at the big vision, our big vision. I'll start with kind of the end goal in mind, if you will. And it's, where do we go with the opportunities that we have found presented by, our growth in the Saskatoon berry industry. So that really stems from approximately 64% of Canadian adults are overweight or obese, according to 22 Stats Canada data. People are now taking things like Ozempic type drugs or other weight loss injections to help curb their hunger in an effort to lose weight. 64% of the Canadian population, if you can believe it. So the mechanism, which is called GLP-1, is used in an effort to lose weight. And I'm sure everybody's heard of Ozempic or other types of drugs that are out there. And so if you think about taking a pharmaceutical injection for the rest of your life, it will be for the rest of your life. You can't get off of it. So people like myself, and I'm sure there's hundreds of thousands of people like myself, try not to use pharmaceuticals and use natural food as medicines to help us to do that sort of thing. So the mechanism, GLP-1 drug, is a natural phenomenon in our bodies. Our gut secretes a group of hormones that control appetite and metabolism. GLP-1 boosting foods are going to boom in the future. People are going to be looking for natural mechanisms that will help them to control weight. And guess what those foods are? Any guess?
Berries?
Well, good guess. And you should have just said Saskatoon berries.
Right, of course, yes, yeah.
But you're absolutely right. It's foods high in fiber.
Right.
And berries, Saskatoon berries in particular, just one cupful of those give you 25% of your fiber requirement on a daily basis. 25%, one cup, right? So fiber-rich plants, by eating those, you have a natural GLP-1 mechanism that is releasing the types of hormones that will suppress your appetite. So as people move forward looking for that, our goal is to have a product that suppresses your appetite through the fiber mechanisms in Saskatoon berries.
A product that does that and also tastes really good as well.
Oh, absolutely. Saskatoons have a great taste.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm actually addicted to the Saskatoon berry jam these days. I know it has a
Oh.
lot of sugar in it.
Oh, it doesn't. We make low sugar products.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. That's really good to know. So it's interesting. I mean, there's so many health benefits, but I find that there's not much information that is out there that basically creates awareness about these health benefits and puts this product in spotlight. So how are you? I know you're part of a number of organizations as well, and you have this goal and this vision to be able to create awareness about this. How are you making this change and addressing this gap of knowledge that people have about Saskatoon berries?
Well, you remember early on in my conversation when I talked about the marketing side of it,
Yes.
right? So, marketing is a necessity in terms of getting people to understand your business or to get people to use your business. And so, if I was to think about the one failure, even one of many that I've made, but we'll talk about this one first, is that the whole marketing side of it is, I'm not a marketer. I'm a very kind of down to earth people. I don't like to brag and that sort of thing. And even doing this podcast is something outside of my normal way of doing business. But thank you, Monique.
I'm so glad you're doing it. So.
Is that, and it takes money to do it.
Yes.
Right? And so when we built our business, is that I came from a relatively poor family of 7. We stretched every penny as far as we could go. My husband came from a farming family, and I talked about the downturn in the late 80s, and they didn't borrow money so that they didn't get into the same predicament as their grandfather who lost their land several times. My husband did borrow some money back in the early 70s, and when the downturn happened and we had high interest rates, he was paying like 28% interest on that, and he too almost lost his land. So needless to say, our mindset in terms of managing was, if you can't afford to do it, then don't do it. And so running a business with that mindset of if you can't afford to do it, then don't do it, we left out the marketing piece. Right? And today that still is one of the greatest challenges that I face, is to find the right mechanism to get people to understand the health benefits of Saskatoon berries. And because I don't want to run any kind of a scam in terms of marketing, is that I'm sometimes afraid to say the things that I know, because somebody might think that they're scam-like and think of me as a scammer. So it your behavior and your thought patterns affect the way that you actually run a business. And I think from that perspective, with our collective backgrounds, my husband and I, and the fact that we don't know how to market, is that lacked significantly in our business, and the financing to do it.
Right. Well, marketing is something that is always changing and it's always evolving, especially in the last 10 years. It has changed so much. Mm-hmm. And I think that, there's, the recipe of success really is, and I say this to many businesses, is that you need to definitely have a great product, which you do. But then you need to let people know about that product. It's about awareness. And the awareness is done through the marketing, through the activities for promoting your product and so forth. And in order to be better than your competition, you have to do it better. You have to do the promotion, and you have to do build the product in a way that is better than your competitors as well. If you have that recipe of success, you can gain market share. You can actually expand your business effectively. So you're definitely on the right path there. And I'm glad that you're actually taking some challenges and some new initiatives to really spread the word about Saskatoon berries, because I think that I believe that there's so much to learn about Saskatoon berries, and the more people know about it, the benefits and so forth, the more people will be inclined to using the product and making that as part of their lifestyle, especially in the Prairie provinces.
Yeah, where, everybody grew up tasting Saskatoon berries, and they always talk about, oh, my grandma made the best Saskatoon berry. We spend our time in the summers picking Saskatoon berries. I grew up in the city. I never had that experience, so I really had no idea. Right. So when I got into it, it wasn't about because Saskatoon berries were a part of my history. It was because of the medicinal properties, and I'm a like to think that I pay attention to my health, and so that's what interested me most in the Saskatoon berries was the medicinal properties.
Wow, makes sense. So obviously you've been in business for almost like about 30 years now, right? And you've experienced a lot of ups and downs. And what was one of the most challenging points in your business? Because we all face this as entrepreneurs. Sometimes we say, okay, have we made the right decision, right? And sometimes you get into business because you want to basically get some freedom, but it becomes a prison. And I would like to know if you've come across any of these points where, which you've obviously learned from over the years. But what was that one game-changing point that you felt was really critical, where you decided, okay, that we're going to continue with this rather than go away from it?
I think I would have to say that it was back in 2011.
Okay.
And that was at the point in time where our company was either going to have to get more financial resources in or quit and quit the business. And so I'm not a quitter. And what we did was we looked at the Dragon's Den. So that was our marketing strategy, but implemented wrong, by the way.
Okay.
So we looked at Dragon's Den as a way to promote Saskatoon berries. So we applied to go on Dragon's Den. Everybody thought we were crazy, and we probably were crazy. But anyways, we got picked to be one of the participants on Dragon's Den. And one of the things that, after studying, and I watched every episode and every question that was asked, one of the things that was very obvious to me, you either had to be really bad or you had to be really good. So it didn't matter to me whether I was really bad or really good. The point is that I had to make an impression. So we did Dragon's Den, and we took it as a juice to promote the medicinal properties of the Saskatoon berry juice. And so that was very successful for us. But what we didn't do was think far enough ahead. And that thinking far enough ahead was, what if we were the successful one as opposed to the bad one? So after the Dragon's Den show, of which Arlene Dickinson, who said she would invest, so if Arlene would invest, then guess what? We had a whole lot of investors coming to the table saying, oh, if you need money, we can help you, right? So we used a local company rather than Arlene because they didn't want any percentage in our business. But in hindsight, I probably should have went with Arlene because she's a better marketer than the investment company was. So that would probably be one of the significant learnings from our experience of trying to operate our business is to, what did we need the most? We targeted Arlene because we needed marketing, and then I didn't go with her and took a local investment company to help us from a financial point of view. So it's about getting the expertise and resources that you need. You need resources to run a company, and sometimes thinking you can do it all on your own, like we did, isn't always the right way to go. I'll give a promotion to one company that I think has done a really well job. 3 farmers here in Saskatoon. Right. They have gotten tens of millions of dollars of investment to grow their company. Right? They took that step, that risk that I couldn't take as an entrepreneur, and go after their dream. Right. Whereas I thought I could do it organically. And look, I'm 30 years out and I'm still not there. Not that I've given up, but I'm still not there. So that would be the one thing that I would advise entrepreneurs or other people trying to make sure that their dream happens. Don't be afraid to step out. Right. Don't let your background, I told you about my background and my husband's background, influence your decisions for growth and success.
Such a great insight. Thank you so much for sharing, Sandy, on that, because I can just imagine that, in hindsight, it's always 2020. We could always do certain things right afterwards, but there's a certain time and space to be able to make the right decision, and I think that you have to put things aside to be able to really see independently whether this is the right decision to move forward. And sometimes we take those decisions, sometimes we don't, and they hurt us. But you've learned a lot from that experience, and you're on a path for growth right now. You are on a path for, obviously, updating your business and so forth. So you've evolved quite a bit though in the past 10 years. And
True. Yes.
and what has that evolution looked like, and how has, because I know a lot of businesses have suffered through the pandemic, and other businesses have really grown through the pandemic as well. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about, your journey in the past 10 years as far as how you've grown and how you've evolved from that experience that you've had on Dragon's Den.
Oh, wow. Well, the COVID impact had significant impact on all of us. It
course.
doesn't matter what business you talk to, they've all had impact, right? And so trying to maneuver our way through that is that the one thing that I definitely knew for sure that we needed to move forward over the next 10 years was to keep the employees that we had, is not to lose their expertise, not to lose their passion or their dedication to our company. So we managed through keeping them on at a financial strain on the company to keep them on so that we didn't lose them. And that paid off in millions of dollars for us, if you really think about it, because those same employees are there dedicated today with passion to make sure that our company grows. And coming out of the COVID impact is that we were impacted by the food service industry,
Right.
because we're in that industry. We create pie fillings and fruit toppings and dried products and concentrates and that sort of thing. So we lost a lot of sales. Coming out of it, the sales picked up, and now that we are where we are today, 2-3 years out, the demand for Saskatoon berries have grown beyond our supply capacity.
Excellent.
So if I look out now, 10 years later, we will have a brand new orchard with more supply and production. We'll have more people maybe interested in the Saskatoon berry industry growing and supplying into the industry so that we can create these nutraceuticals or natural products to help with weight control, disease control, and just live healthy lifestyles by eating berries. Not only my berries, but there's lots of other berries, but it just needs to be a part of our diet going forward if we're going to be healthy.
Makes sense. So with regards to this change, obviously one of the target audiences that you focus on, and you work a lot with restaurants, right? Which are one of the industries that got impacted during the pandemic quite a bit. And how have you kind of shifted that? How have you kind of overcome that challenge of retapping into that target audience and promoting your product?
Yeah, so with the food service industry, we have two major companies we work with, Cisco and Gordon's Food Service.
Yes.
I should say three, and Pratt's locally here in Saskatchewan. And so what we've done with them is to provide them with more marketing material to take into the restaurants to know how to use the Saskatoon berries and to give them a larger portfolio of products that we're using. Before, we only concentrated on fruit toppings and pie fillings, but now in the restaurant industry, chefs are really looking to not only promote health, but to come up with new products using unique food products. So like powders and concentrates now are things that they're starting to use in the food service industry. Right. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we've done to help grow that particular side of an industry. And it has worked so far. And so I'm sure there's a lot more to be done because we have, there's Cisco also goes into the U.S. and yes. GFS also goes into Eastern Canada. So we can expand to many different places rather than just keeping it with the Prairie provinces.
Excellent. And that's really good to know. And ultimately, as you're going into this direction here, what does the future of the business look like here over the next 10 years?
Ooh. Well, I talked a little bit about
yes.
the opportunity that we have in developing a high fiber kind yes. of GLP-1 food replacement, right?
That's
so
right,
people
yeah.
have a natural alternative to using a pharmaceutical drug in terms of controlling weight. We have done research with Richardson Center out of Manitoba looking at how Saskatoon berries can be used in the prevention of diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. So we foresee tremendous growth in that area because of the science behind what we're saying as a claim to how Saskatoon berries can contribute to having health properties and better immune system.
Right. Okay, excellent. So it's working on that vision of creating more awareness and creating particular products. And have you thought about tapping into, is your market mainly in Canada right now, or is it across the border too, or are you planning to expand further?
Yeah, so just to give you a bit of perspective on the production of Saskatoon berries, if we take the production in Manitoba, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, we're probably at about 6 million pounds of berries. Right? So with 6 million pounds of berries, you have to be very selective in terms of how you approach the market. Because if you don't have supply, you develop a market, now you don't have supply, you're only really shooting yourself in the foot. So there has to be a balance between marketing, supply, and your ability to deliver into that market. So that is our approach of moving forward and what we can go after in terms of target markets.
Interesting. So that's part of being the entrepreneur and the farmer. Like you have to kind of think about all these different scenarios and have a balance there. So
right.
Otherwise, if you have too much supply and less demand, it creates a problem. Otherwise, and you have a lot in stock. So
yeah, and just talking about that, what happens with that scenario is that back in 2009, I believe it was, is that so we were very busy working with other orchard growers because we knew that if we had a catastrophe in our orchard, is that we would need to get supply from elsewhere. So we started cultivating these, what we call strategic partnerships, and we have 7 other orchards that we work very closely with, and we're all part of the same kind of business plan, if you will. And so in 2009, we had committed to buy all of these berries from their 7 growers. Happened to be a good year in terms of production. So we had a huge volume of Saskatoon berries sitting in the freezers at a high cost of storage, and we didn't have the markets for them. So it almost took us out of business in 2009 because we couldn't finance paying the growers plus keeping all these berries in storage. And I said I'd talk about the government programs.
Yes.
And at that point in time, the government had come out with, because there was a downturn in the industry again, and so they come out with some programs for value-add processing and strategic partnerships. So we approached Oasis, which is a juice company you're well aware of, to develop a juice because we had tons of berries that we couldn't move into the marketplace. So we developed a high antioxidant juice, good juice. We don't make it anymore, unfortunately, but maybe it's time to go back to them now where we got more berries. And they put it in the marketplace. We were able to move all of that supply into Oasis to be processed, and the growers got some, but maybe not what they were looking for, but at least none of us went out of business on that. And it was primarily because of that government program for value-add processing to partner with other companies across Canada to come up with a new food product. And so that's how we managed our way out of that jam in our business.
Wow.
Or should I say juice?
Excellent. No, that's wonderful. I mean, I think that a lot of times, as entrepreneurs, we don't tend to look at some of these other programs that are available. And I think that these incentives are available to help businesses grow and help businesses when they're in need. Where would somebody go to do some of this research here? Mainly on the government website, or where do you find to be valuable to do some of this research as far as these programs are concerned?
Yeah, so every year, I know the Saskatchewan government, and I'm sure the ones in Alberta and Manitoba do the same. Right. Every year, the Saskatchewan government holds a session, I think it's called AgriValue Conference, and they put out a list of all of the different funding programs that are available to processors, entrepreneurs. Like, they're not all food related. Some of them are related to, say, fishing, developing horticulture, those sorts of things. And they put out a list of programs. So that's a good way to get into it and to learn about them. But you can also go to the website to do that. IRAP also is another good funding program for technical. We've used them on our research behind the functional benefits of Saskatoon berries. They've been very helpful to us in getting the data that we need to prove that they are a functional food. So, and then there are Also, some of the financing companies like Business Development Bank of Canada
That's right.
have different financing programs and also have good expertise in terms of helping individuals understand if you want to export, what is it going to take and how do you develop those plans to do so.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing these insights, because sometimes, business owners, they get confused and they just don't know where to start, right? And
Absolutely.
this, you've had positive experiences with some of these resources. So if you share that, with the audience here, it really helps them out too. But thank you so much for taking the time today to come and do this interview. It's been a pleasure to actually go through your journey and learn so much about your business and Prairie Berries. And would love to know, like, if there was one big takeaway that you could give to our listeners and entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast, what would that big takeaway be?
Well, for me, it is, and I know this, it's not me originally that said this, but there's some author that said it. It's enjoy what you do, and you'll never work a day in your life. Be passionate, be kind, and find a way to give back to your community.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Sandy. Where can people learn more about your business and yourself online?
Well, they can go to our website, www.prairieberries.com.
Excellent.
And there's a contact information on the website. We also put out a blog. You can check out the blogs and learn more about the nutritional and health benefits of Saskatoon berries.
That's wonderful. We'll certainly include the links to your blog and to your website and to your profile, and certainly wish you the best in your venture. And it's a pleasure to have you here on the podcast.
Thank you, Mandeep. Thanks for having me come out to do this.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Sask Entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a spark of inspiration. To catch more stories and lessons learned from Saskatchewan's business leaders, visit SaskEntrepreneurs.com. Until next time, keep building, keep growing, and keep Saskatchewan strong. Ciao.